Hello, everyone. I'm David Bodorf, Executive Director of the Association of Indiana Counties, and thanks for watching this WebEx. As you know, there's a lot of activity in Indiana regarding renewable energy. There's some bills at the State House that we're following, and then also we know a lot of counties are being approached by renewable energy companies, both wind and solar. So we wanted to have this WebEx to make some experts available to you, and not only on the legislation, but some things that you should look for when developers come to your county asking for your assistance or your guidance on where they might place their renewable energy projects. So with us today is Ryan Hoff.
Hello, Ryan Hoff. I'm the Director of Government Relations and General Counsel for AIC.
Commissioner Mark Airbrandt.
I'm Commissioner Mark Airbrandt from Hamilton County. I also have worked in the energy efficiency world in the state of Indiana for a company called Amoresco for 20 years.
And Mike Farbach.
Hi, I'm Mike Farbach with Constellation. I provide natural gas services and energy solutions for efficiency in the state of Indiana.
And finally, Greg Cox.
Yeah, hi, Greg Fox, and I handle national accounts for our energy solution team at Constellation, primarily focusing on efficiency and renewable energy solutions. And I've been working for them for 31 years, and then during that time also served as a councilman for 12 years up until a couple years ago.
Thanks. And so we're going to start off talking about legislation, so I'm going to turn this over to Ryan.
Thanks, David. I'm going to briefly give an overview of 3 different bills related to renewable energy that are under consideration at the Indiana General Assembly as we speak. Really, we are in the midst of legislative session, so these are certainly hot topics. First being House Bill 1381. This bill is a preemption of any local government planning and zoning authority over both wind development, I should say utility scale wind development, and also utility scale solar developments. The bill would set state standards for things such as height restrictions, noise restrictions, setbacks, decommissioning agreements, and so forth. One set of standards for solar, one set of standards for wind. The mechanism is that it would preempt any existing planning and zoning controls over these types of developments, require that the county adopt the state standards over these, I guess I call them technical aspects of a development. But the local unit would not be able to further restrict the development in any way, including saying where within the county these developments would go. So we're certainly concerned about this bill. We're trying to get the word out to all of our members that if you disagree with that approach, that preemption of local authority, then please reach out to your legislators and let them know. This bill was heard in committee already this week and will likely be considered again next week in committee. So again, hot topic. Time is of the essence on House Bill 1381. Another bill, House Bill 1348, sets a standard for how utility scale solar developments are taxed for purposes of property taxes, not the business personal property taxes on the panels themselves, but the land underlying a large scale solar field, how the county would have to assess the real estate. That bill was heard in House Ways and Means Committee this week and passed out of that committee already. So it seems to be on the fast track. Seems like a acceptable standard according to the rules of Indiana property tax assessment. So certainly we will be keeping an eye on that bill. The next bill, the third bill, House Bill 1394, provides net metering for local government and other local units such as schools. The concept behind net metering is if you have let's say a solar field on part of your county property. In the past, any extra, so you're generating electricity via the solar field that you've installed. You use that energy to power your county facilities. Any extra energy that was created by your solar field would be sold back onto the power grid. And before 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you would be selling that energy back onto the grid at the commercial rate, the same rate that the utility charges you when you buy their energy. The net metering law in Indiana was changed a couple of years ago to say that when you sell electricity back onto the grid, you sell it at the wholesale rate rather than the commercial rate. That makes it more difficult for local units to finance these types of developments, to put that type of infrastructure on your own facilities so that you can offset your utility costs. That's three pieces of legislation. 1394, House Bill 1394 would allow local units of government, including schools, counties, cities, and towns, to once again start selling their extra electricity back onto the grid at the commercial rate, thus benefiting your taxpayers and your county bottom line. So that's three pieces of legislation currently moving at the Indiana General Assembly regarding renewable energy. And I'm going to turn it over to Greg and Mark to explain a little bit more about net metering, how it impacts counties, and how the industry is looking at renewables.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to pull up this article from the Star. It talks about how we were doing really well with solar industry expansion a couple of years ago, and then the General Assembly took that net metering away, and we actually decreased in development. And ironically, here the General Assembly is back 2 years ago now, almost forcing solar development in a county without the county having any input as to where it may be located. So the General Assembly often shifts gears on us like this, but I'm going to turn it over to Mark Hairbrand to talk about the project that they did in Hamilton County.
Great, thank you, David. I think it's important to start to explain why we looked at doing solar here in Hamilton County. With me being in the energy industry, we started to look at our utility costs, and we saw that that was our second highest cost other than employee salaries and benefits. And so that was kind of eye-opening coming into office to see that. And so one of our largest users was our correctional facility, and that was our campus that we have with our jail, community corrections, and juvenile center that's over off of Cumberland Road. And so as we started to investigate it back in 2015, we looked at what the return on investment would be, and we decided that it didn't make sense at that time to do. But as technology changes, we re-looked at this back in early 2018, and the cost of the solar panels had went down almost in half, and electricity costs continued to go up. And so we revisited this again, and we developed a 3.2 megawatt solar system for our jail project that produces about almost 4 million kilowatts per hour annually is what it does. Our construction started in March of 2018. They passed Senate Bill 309 soon, after that, because on the net metering, as Ryan had spoken about, and we wanted to make sure that we maximized what we could get back from the utilities. And so it was important for us to finish our project by the end of the year to make sure that we captured that net metering piece of it. Our project cost was around $5 million. Right now, it is still the largest county-owned solar project for a jail in the state of Indiana. We installed 9,300 solar panels, and as David may show you here on the screen, we put them not only roof mounted after we replaced some of the roofs, so we had a new roof barrier while we were doing the roofs. We decided to put solar on those. We also had some land that was also in the floodplain area across the street from the jail complex that we were able to put the rest of the ground-mounted solar panels on that. Our budget, we currently spend somewhere around $1.8 million annually in our utility bills. And so what this actually did over there is it cut our costs, our electrical costs, by about 40%. So what is frustrating, I guess, to me is that we're always asked to do more with our dollars and make an impact on the community. And so we tried to do something like the solar project like that, to think outside the box and really try to be creative and innovative. And then they changed they passed Senate Bill 309, and they limit what we can do to try to save the taxpayer dollars. While we're tax capped and the utilities continue to raise their costs, we have to suffer on it. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that's frustrating to me, and why this net metering bill, this 1394 that's being carried by Tony Cook, I would encourage you to support it. This would allow net metering for schools and local government to be able to utilize this and to be able to get a quicker return on investment on our tax dollars that we get.
Thanks, Mark. And Mark and I have talked quite a bit about this since they did this project, very successful. And as you all know, energy costs continue to rise. The investor-owned utility companies are often seeking rate increases that exceed the revenue that we can generate because of tax caps. So it's really an unsustainable financial system unless we get the ability to do things like this net metering to substantially reduce our costs. So kudos to Hamilton County for doing a great project and taking the lead and showing other counties how they can save money on their energy costs.
We're going to save about $25 million over the next 25 years with that particular project. And it also, we were awarded the Association of Indiana Counties Project of the Year with this project.
And again, with us is Greg from Constellation. And Greg does projects really has been involved throughout the country. He's based in Maryland right now. But Greg, can you talk a little bit about, if you're considering doing a net metering, what are some things that you would want to look at as far as fees? And again, sometimes there may be fee increases that you don't expect when you do your own project. Again, we've got to get this legislation passed before we can move forward with more projects. But hopefully we can get it passed, and then we can have further discussions about this issue. But Greg, can you talk a little bit about some of the potential fees that can be generated that you have to watch for when you're doing a project like this?
Yeah, I'll just give you some of the considerations and things to look at as you're going through developing these projects. One, I think it's great that they're expanding the net metering. So it's and again, I guess the thing to be aware of is, assuming this bill does pass, that you want to get moving because again, it's not an unlimited net metering. It's from my understanding, the plan, at least as the bill is written currently, is to double the amount that they've previously allowed, from 1.5% to 3% of the peak demand of each of the utilities that's then being allowed for net metering. So you want to make sure that you're getting in the queue and moving forward. The other thing, which is a positive that's occurred recently, is the expansion of the federal investment tax credit. While that's not a credit that would go, obviously, to a local unit of government, typically when these projects are being funded, they're being done through either power purchase agreement or through some sort of lease arrangement where somebody else is taking advantage of those investment tax credits and other aspects, of the financial deal associated with the solar. So that investment tax credit, which was scheduled to go down this year from 26% to 22%, and then the following year to 10%, has actually been extended for 2 years at 26%. So again, another reason if this passes to really get moving, make sure you're getting projects, in the queue and looking at things on the, things to watch out for, as you're getting getting these agreements done and developed, is understanding the remaining power that you have with your facility and how that's being billed by your local utility to make sure you understand the impacts of taking off the load shape associated with solar production. So solar is something that, it's not producing obviously at night, starts production to drop. You still are potentially going to have the demand charges from utility potentially will not go down, yet you've had that reduction in use. So you need to make sure you're looking at things holistically when you're looking at how you're pricing your solar or evaluating your project. The other thing to consider too, which is something that's growing, is Mark mentioned, technology is continuing to improve. The efficiency and cost of some of the solars continue to come down. And so now we're sort of into that next area, which is potentially the addition of storage. And depending on which utility, you're in within Indiana, some of them do have, much, more on the higher demand charges versus on the energy side, or have demand ratchets where your demand that you set in 1 month is a demand that at least some portion of it gets continues in other months. There could be a reason to look at storage in conjunction with your solar project as you're making your evaluation. So something else to consider as you're going through that process.
And as we kind of pivot here towards private development, and again, every day I feel like I see another news article where a county has approved a solar field. I think just this week, Knox County approved a 2,500 acre solar field. So counties, are accepting renewable energy. We have to make sure the counties have good ordinances and good policies in place, and that'll go a long way to make sure you can control where these projects go, because the solar field is usually a 30-year life. So you have to take into consideration, if you grant a project, that's going to tie up that land for 30 years. And you won't be able to do other economic development projects around that land, perhaps. So something to consider. And then also, really, one thing that was talked about 2 years ago, and again, I feel like the General Assembly is now disregarded, is taking prime agricultural land out of production. And that's a big issue as well. And so all these issues are interrelated. And the other thing you have to remember is, like Greg said, they're getting federal subsidies. So they may come into the county and say, well, okay, now we want tax abatement on the personal property, which would be the panels. And if you do that, you should definitely talk about economic development incentives and a payment in lieu of taxes, or some type of incentive to benefit the community as much as you can, so that there is some tax revenue generated off the panels themselves, as well as the land. And the same is true for wind. We have several counties in Indiana, Benton and White were probably the first counties to accept wind towers, and they've been very happy with that. It's proved to be very beneficial to them and their schools. But again, it's because they asked for incentives, agreed to incentives at the beginning of the project, to make sure the community still receive tax revenue from that. And from their perspective, it's been a great economic development tool. And again, all these processes create higher assessed value, higher than the agricultural land itself. So counties do have an incentive to look at these projects and make sure they're in the best interest of the community, balancing with new tax revenue, as well as planning and zoning and future economic development. Greg, and other projects that you all have worked on, are there things that counties should ask for or inquire about from the company as to what kind of benefits they should seek when they do a project?
So again, and you're talking there as far as projects being done for the county versus projects being done in them, like on agricultural land. Is that?
Well, more so, more about if the farmer is going to lease his land for 30 years, we still have a planning and zoning ability, so we can put some requirements on there. For instance, I know that some counties have talked about making sure that there's There's still plants on the ground for pollination purposes. We've talked, believe it or not, the Beekeepers Association has reached out to us and talked about that's a very positive aspect. So are there other things that counties should look at in those type of private projects where they still need permit approval?
Yeah, and I'm going to be a little careful here and say I'm speaking from my perspective and not necessarily the companies. I also, like I said, wore a hat out here in Maryland that was a council person's hat, and had to look at some of these things as it related to how we would deal with them in our area. One of the things is that I've seen is making sure that if you are going to be doing something on land versus like up on a building roof or in a carports in a parking lot, is making sure that there's provisions in place for removal at the end of the project, and there's some sort of cost there, so you don't end up with some abandoned solar project 20 years or 30 years down the road that's sitting on there, and that there's something that's built in the cost of the contract or however you're doing things that's going to address the decommissioning of that system, so it's not some cost somebody's they're fighting over down the road. Those are the things you don't want, the unintended consequences potentially occurring. So that would be one of the big things, probably one of the biggest things that we saw. And then going to some of the zoning side, both on thing, again, from my perspective versus a company or anything, is local control is so important, because there's things that are so specific to what might be happening in neighboring properties and things having to do with your planning and everything else, that you got to really be careful if the state is dictating things. It's one thing if they're going to dictate things that might have to do with minimum safety type requirements, so such as like fall zones with wind, or having to do with the towers, and how they're doing some of those things. But got to be careful having it be very blanket, because each area is different. And you do have I know you guys operate currently pointing people to some of the best practices for setting these things up and setting up these guidances in each of their own jurisdictions. I think that's really the way to go.
In IU has helped develop a model solar ordinance, and we'll attach that when we send this out, that document. But it's really, I think, a good balance of the industry standards, but also maintaining some local control. So IU did a great job of bringing together various partners to help develop that model ordinance. Another thing we're looking at in Indiana, of course, is broadband development, internet connectivity, and not necessarily fiber, because some of these wind towers and solar fields are going to be out in very rural Indiana. That's the best place for them. And so they're going to have internet connectivity, either a fiber or some kind of a powerful cellular transmission of data. And we're encouraging counties to talk to the developers about that too. Is there any way that the county can tap into that broadband so that others in the rural area can participate? Again, they're probably not going to let you actually tap into their fiber, but maybe it's something you can talk about. Would they dig another trench that would be the sort of the public fiber, things like that? So again, I think all these things are sort of negotiable when you're talking to companies to come to Indiana. And again, when we talk to these companies, they talk about the great tax climate in Illinois, which we don't hear that too often. That Illinois has a better tax climate than Indiana. But sure enough, they're coming here, right? They want to be here. So I think you have to try to work with them and make sure it's the biggest benefit to the community that you can possibly negotiate when it comes to that. Other states are deregulated on electric. Indiana's not, and we're going to talk about our natural gas program here in just a minute. Any perception you all have about the states who have done electric deregulation, and how's that either benefited the community, the ratepayers? And we often hear from the industry that deregulation creates shortage, electricity problems. There's no new investment for production. Do you see that in the states that have electric deregulation?
I mean, I don't know if I could fully, speak to that. And again, this would just be from my observation, versus corporate. But what we generally see is more that a lot more innovation comes out of the areas that do have the deregulation, for electric, both in products and opportunities for customers. And while maybe in those early years, I think, people were pointing to potentially what were higher prices, you're seeing now energy prices now much lower I believe right now for electricity in Illinois versus Indiana. Now, tax climate is a different story. I think that's more some of them for some of these projects, providing incentives versus it is their actual tax rates. That's a different issue. But I think what you see is innovation and things that actually allow long-term, pricing, as well as things that meet the needs, especially of some of your larger businesses and industrials, where they're able to create things that work for them and still work for the providers that allow them to be more competitive in these deregulated markets.
And I
Dave, hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is I think, states like Indiana that aren't deregulated for power, I think you're seeing the marketplace looking for alternatives. And if it's looking at energy efficiency projects, I mean, people are seriously taking a look at these things where they can get control. I think there's creative financial ways for them to get equipment, those types of things. But to what Mark had made an important point, that power can sometimes be the second most expensive expense a company has. And so if we can help them lower their demand charges, that's big dollars in their pocket. So companies are seriously taking a look at alternatives to become more efficient. And as the environment corporately is changing with sustainability, becoming efficient is part of that plan. And so you're starting to see companies starting to implement 5 and 10 and 20-year plans where they're trying to become not only carbon neutral, but just more efficient.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really, on the bigger picture of the industry, I can feel like it's just 6 or 8 years ago where investor owns were really sort of reluctant to have to be forced to allow renewable energy onto their system. And now we have investor owns who are in the process of creating their own renewable energy, wind and solar fields. And so the industry is just changing so fast, and I think it's for the betterment for all ratepayers, I hope. But it's really important, I think, that counties try to stay on top of the ever fast changing utility industry.
And along some of those lines, and I'm going to toss something out maybe for debate amongst yourselves on this one, is even with this net metering, the first tranche of net metering that occurred, that was allowing for it with both government and industrial commercial customers. It might be something, because for each of the counties, those, as you're trying to keep businesses in the state and in your counties, a lot of them have these goals that Mike mentioned, and it's going to be hard for them without some of the net metering to be able to do the solar. We are working on a big project there outside of Indianapolis for a major industrial, but they're such a large user that they don't need to worry about the net metering. But a lot of the companies do, and they really want to to meet their goals. And maybe it's something for you guys to discuss as a group, whether should that be both for the local units of government as well as for industrial commercial.
That's a great point, Greg. And one of the things that we did also that we really haven't discussed is our natural gas purchase plan. And maybe Mike might be able to talk a little bit more about that as well. But when we looked at what we were paying with electric costs compared to natural gas, because obviously they shifted way down, we looked at purchasing a lot of compressed natural gas vehicles. And so we actually have a filling station at our jail. We collaborated, with the city, with some of the cities, some of the schools too, so that they could use that. And we're purchasing our fuel at about what would be relative to about 39 cents a gallon, compared to what the market currently has right now. But we looked at that, and then when we looked at it, a natural gas purchasing plan, we combined that with all of our buildings that use natural gas, as well as what we were going to use for a filling station. And we brought that whole price and we drove it down to save us even more money. So it's something that's, I think, very important to not to overlook, is to look at a natural gas purchase plan.
Yeah, oh, Mark's a good point. Vectren, the utility company for about 2/3 of the state, has had a program to allow counties to transport gas since 2006 for schools and colleges. And then in 2012, they expanded that for government accounts, so cities, towns, counties. Currently, we serve 34 of the counties. The majority of those are in the Vectren territory because, again, it's a layup. It's as you just indicated, we can help counties purchase their natural gas from 2 to 5 years forward and manage cost. The other point that was made is, since the discovery of shale gas about 10 or 12 years ago, gas prices are trading below $3, so customers are able to fix their gas prices long term. And then Mark, the same point would be for the NIPSCO market, where again they have what they call the NIPSCO Choice Program, which allows the NIPSCO counties to operate the same way, where they're able to buy gas from a third party. NIPSCO still does the billing, so it's almost seamless. And then one other aspect of this that I'll veer into it is Constellation provides a service called Efficiency Made Easy, and if you are a natural gas customer or a power customer of ours, we help fund energy projects. And so it's one of those things. It's not on an ESCO level, but basically we'll help them solve some of their efficiency problems with projects that will be 3 to 5 years in payback. We utilize the natural gas invoice as a billing mechanism. So then on the accounting side, it might be looked at as an operational expense versus a capital expense. Every group has to look at that, how they look at that. But again, right now, COVID has just caused major problems where money's tight, but people still have, energy related problems that they're trying to solve. And, Constellation's been a partner of AIC for a long time. So if any counties want to get a free audit on their natural gas, I'll be glad to do that. And if they have energy efficiency projects, our Efficiency Made Easy team would be glad to talk to them. I mean, part of that is that we are a solutions-based company, but you've got to identify your areas of need first, and that's what we help people do.
And just to add on to that too, I mean, we work with a lot of different providers as far as on the efficiency side of the solutions. And I'd never met Mark prior to today, but actually Amoresco, his other side of his life, they are actually one of our approved channel partners as well. But we work with really just trying to help folks out, and it's something not just for for the government entities. It's stuff for your constituents. It's again trying to think things broadly about what helps you guys as counties. It's also the success of your employee base, your employment base, and to the extent we can help them become more efficient and work with you, it could really be another benefit to really look at, both from renewable as well as efficiency.
And David, Indiana is a very large agricultural state, and besides solar and wind, there's a lot of growth in regards to renewable natural gas and biodigesters. And so, to complement the agricultural world. So a lot of companies with the growth of sustainability, they're trying to help companies figure out ways to reduce their carbon footprint. And many companies are buying, renewable natural gas to help reduce their carbon footprint. So just a lot of options that people need to come to the table and have discussions on. David, I was going to say one other thing, that just like you're having this conference, Constellation, we have monthly webinars to help, where any county can call in and listen to a free webinar to say, hey, what's the commodity market doing? And at the same time, David, if any county or any of your regional groups, districts would like to host a luncheon webinar, I'd be glad to help them out in regards to address the issues, especially if it comes to sustainability and long-term planning. But those are things where, again, there's low-hanging fruit, but there's also long-term planning items that are out there. And then how do they keep track of information? That's the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that counties try to be aggressive on trying to save energy costs, because it's so expensive, so much part of our budget. And so there is an audit program that Constellation has, and I'm going to let Mike talk real briefly about that. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Are you going to pull that screen up?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, Constellation last year, David, Constellation purchased a company called PairAI. If you can go to the front one.
Yep. Give me 1 second here. Right, there you go.
There you go. Great. PairAI is an energy intelligence platform that utilizes artificial intelligence, data analytics to manage customers' costs and energy use. And the purpose of this is that as a company, Constellation, and our parent company, Exelon, we manage millions of customers throughout the United States. And so as sustainability and good citizenship is taking place in the marketplace, we invested in this company to help utilize this tool to help companies become more efficient. If you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Most companies that I work with still get paper invoices, and most companies have at least 3 to 5 different utilities: power, gas, water, sewer. Some have waste management, some buy propane, and they probably even have others that they have. And keeping track of all of this data, just for example, one medium-sized county in Indiana that I met with has over 400 utility bills every month. And you times 12, that's a lot of utility bills. And so how do you organize that and keep it tracked? So what PairAI does is customers that are our natural gas customers, we are beginning to include this service for a portion of their accounts. And so we will digitalize their utility bills, where their information is uniformly put into a system where they can look at it on their handheld phone, just like you're looking at this picture, their computer, their iPads, and that information is downloaded automatically. Next slide. One of the things about this is this program is using artificial intelligence, and what it does is that it starts to generate insights and model predictive behavior, so we can start to track what it's doing for the customer. PairAI will identify anomalies or just odd bills, where sometimes people get bills and they just don't look right. This will throw up a flag to the customer so they can address it. One of the neat things as you're looking at a phone, if you could press that button and you could say, "Hey Siri, what's the weather in Indianapolis today?" Your phone talks back to you and tells you the weather. This program has a similar feature where the customer can press a button and ask questions. Next slide, Dan. If you really simplify it, what we're trying to do is we're bringing managed power to help and customize a service where people can put all of their utility information in one place, and it's digital. If one thing that we've learned this year, David, in regards to COVID, is that a lot of people have been locked up. I'm speaking to you from my basement. A lot of people have been not at work or not working in their county buildings. This is a service that will be a time saver. It can correct errors, and it has built-in assistance to just help you figure out and manage your accounts. And going back to the previous conversation the last half an hour, what we're really trying to do is figure out how can people lower their energy costs. So PairAI will help them analyze their data to then take the next step of operational efficiency. Once a customer is set up, David, the PAIR program will validate and audit utility bills every month. It will raise a flag for items that need to be resolved. It creates, one of the other things that's really nice about this, David, is I've sit in meetings where I'll be with the accounts payable team and maybe somebody from a facility side of it, and often they don't touch base. This allows counties and organizations now to have everybody understand the value and the total cost of their expenses. So this program will create payment files and accounting steps to approve payments. One of the other things, more and more as companies are moving to sustainability, and often, even if I can step aside to the industrial side of things, many corporations are being asked to prove and verify their sustainability steps and how they're making progress. You're seeing in the news every day where somebody's trying to say, we want to be sustainable by 2030 or by 2050, we want to be totally green. And so how are you going to track that? How do you verify that? So PAIR is one of the only companies that helps companies track this and start the process of this forward movement. And so we're really excited about it. Next slide. Again, I think our goal is, one is that we're trying to provide people with energy services. We provide natural gas service, energy efficiency services, but PAIR identifies what needs to be done. So again, when you can start to look at all of your different buildings, some of the counties might have 20 or 30 facilities or accounts. It helps them to figure out what's the cost of their buildings per square foot. That might not be as important to a county, but maybe more to a manufacturer. But they still need to have recognition of, are their bills correct? Are they receiving any penalties from the electric company? Those types of things. So again, David, just as I said, as your natural gas provider for the last 12 years for AIC, I'm looking at natural gas invoices to help people to calculate, hey, can you step to another rate to start immediately reducing your natural gas cost? PAIR does that on all things such as water, power, sewer, and natural gas. So again, getting set up with PAIR is quite easy, and I would love to talk to anybody about that's looking to try to reduce overall utility cost. The next slide, David, is just a reminder. Again, Constellation is AIC's endorsed natural gas supplier. We provide gas to the NIPSCO area. They have a choice program that says if any utility account uses less than 36,000 decatherms, you qualify for the choice program. It's very easy to get set up there. Citizens is wide open. Vectran Territory, which is now owned by Centerpoint, has a program called Rate 125 and Rate 225 for government accounts. And so this program has been in place since 2012. So Dave, in my last slide, I'll make a free offer. If any county wants to have a free audit of their natural gas invoices, they can scan over their utility bills to me, and I will help them calculate, see what the potential savings is. There you go. Yeah, so normally what will happen here is they'll scan a copy of every one of their utility bills, and I'll take a look at those monthly costs and calculate what the potential savings could have been, and then I can give them some forward pricing. And Dave, the last thought is if even though a county might not be transporting gas with us today, I would still be glad to talk to anybody for your districts. I know that the state's divided up into 6 districts. That's a real healthy way to kind of have a conversation about energy concerns, potential. And every county is trying to keep their industrial base in their yard. And so this might be even a nice thing to do to tie in with the industrial base. So we'd be glad to help and sit on any board or have that type of conversation with everybody.
Can I add 2 things on PairAI?
Yeah.
So 2 other quick things on PairAI. One of the things is when it collects all that utility data information, while they don't do a bill payment service, all the information can be set up in, for accounts payable, set up in a file to make the AP portion of what the county does much easier, and just allows you to easily get things billed. So it's another one of the side benefits of utilizing that service for the bills. And then the other thing is for when you're just looking for information and are trying to get it, the AI, obviously artificial intelligence, it learns how you utilize the, trying to gather information and get insights, and makes it very easy. And it's you basically can ask, the system to do certain things versus having to develop, reports, and which is one of the big problems of those types of databases in most cases. So it's a very intuitive system that actually learns the type of information that you're looking for.
And Dave, and Pair is available as a standalone service. So some counties that are not open for transportation gas, it's a standalone service. And then at the same time, our natural gas customers, if we can include the service, we will. And so this is a service that we just purchased last year, and we're now starting to market it and bring it to our customers to help them out.
Good deal. And we'll make that PowerPoint presentation one of the handouts when we send this out. But before we conclude, I just want to, Mark Airbrandt, Commissioner Airbrandt, had to drop off the call, and so did Ryan Hoff. He had to go back to the State House and work on some legislation. But appreciate it again, everybody watching this video. We just want to make sure you're aware of the legislation, that you're talking to your legislators about the bill that would preempt local control. And then also, if you can advocate for the net metering, it's a way for you to help yourself save tax dollars. So that would be a really beneficial bill for us. And really, as counties really need to be aggressive in figuring out ways to reduce their costs on energy, since it is such a large part of the portfolio of the county, the bills you have to pay every month. So again, we've talked a little bit about some efficiencies you can bring to the table from the PairAI program, and then also the natural gas program. If you're not buying natural gas through Constellation, certainly encourage you to do so. It's savings annually, I'll say double digits, at least 10%. I think in the past we've seen 12 to 15%. That's all a little bit about market driven. But again, that is an easy way for you to reduce costs immediately, and you can sign up for that program really anytime throughout the year. So any final comments, Mike or Greg?
I guess, Dave, I would say the only thing that I have is that, I'm holding up a cell phone. These did not exist 15 years ago. Today, we can't live without them. And sometimes when people say, well, I don't understand transportation gas, it's like, I don't know when I hit send how I can call Greg right now in Washington, or I could call you in Indianapolis, but it works. And when people buy transportation gas services, we do what we do. And, I've been in the gas business for over 30 years now. And, we buy gas and we get it to people. And, but at the same time, if you can buy the same gas, but reduce your county's cost, why would you at least not consider it? And again, we've been a partner with AIC for 10 years, and look forward to continuing that relationship. So thanks for the invite today, Dave.
Thanks. All right, thanks, guys. Look for, and hopefully we can continue this discussion at our annual conference, because again, we just need to make sure we keep utility costs at the forefront here as a way to help counties save money. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.